Hey, good morning, Pete, North Las Vegas. Thought we would talk about the RifleSpeed Adjustable Gas Block. I'm going to share a little bit of confusion on my part as to when I was setting this thing up, and just a couple of things I learned about it. It's pretty intuitive for the most part, but I did manage to get myself a little bit confused, so we'll get into that. Okay, so the installation instructions that RifleSpeed has are pretty straightforward. This is a Wilson combat barrel and it comes dimpled. So getting the gas block located in the correct place and getting the gas port on the barrel lined up, that was pretty simple. Okay, so the RifleSpeed regulates the gas coming out of the barrel using a plunger, and that's what the plunger looks like. And this end here attaches to this ring, and this screws in or out, pushing on the ring, which pushes the plunger in and out, and that's how your gas gets regulated. And that's a heat-treated wave spring to keep tension on the ratcheting and locking device. If you're not familiar with the RifleSpeed, it has 1 through 12 settings. Right now I have it on 1. And the smaller the number, the lesser amount of gas. The bigger the number, the more gas you get. So as I come off of position 1 and spin this thing, you can see that I'm pulling the plunger out, and that's allowing more gas into the gas tube. Okay, so that's kind of the basic operation. It's pretty simple design. But now we're going to get to the part where I got a little bit confused. Okay, so I'm going to move this plunger out of the way. That's a picture of the plunger down there. I drew it anatomically correct, or as close as I could get to it. Okay, so with one groove showing, what did I just do with the light? And the groove facing the end of the rifle barrel towards the muzzle end. Let's see if we can, you can see the groove is right up against the gas block. So in his instructions, he tells you to put this on 6 just to start out with. And I think that just makes it easier to see the one groove that's showing. So with one groove showing, you are in what's called range 1. So I'll dial this out to 6, and you'll get a better view of the groove on the plunger. Okay, so you can still see that only one groove is showing. Now, if I back this all the way out to 12, the groove is going to move towards the end of the muzzle, but you still won't be able to see the second groove on the plunger. So I'll put it on 12, and you'll see that there's still only one groove showing. Okay, so I just hit the stops, and you can still see that there's only one groove showing. So that's range 1. Now we have an additional range, it's called range 2, and that will be 2 grooves showing. Now on range 2, we're going to get this out far enough to where we're going to lose spring tension. So if for some reason you need to operate your rifle on range 2 to allow even more gas, depending on your plunger selection, he provides a spacer that goes right here between the gas block and the wave spring. And so that when you get this out into range 2, you still have enough spring tension to where this thing doesn't fall apart. So I'll show you what happens when we get to range 2. You take spring tension off, and that allows you to get past the lock. Okay, so now we're past the lock on range 1. We are now in adjustment range 2. So as I come out, this thing's getting really loose. And you can see that we've come off the stops. So on range 2, That's what this spacer is for. Like I was just showing you a second ago, this keeps spring tension on it so that you hit the range 2 lock so that this thing doesn't spin all the way off. Now you have to use the spacer on range 2, and he cautions you about using the spacer on range 1. Okay, we're still in range 2, and I just hit the stop. So in order to get back into range 1, I have to take spring tension off, get off the lock, rotate it 1 notch. Now we're back into range 1. Okay, now, when I was reading his directions, maybe I got a little confused about how many grooves are supposed to be showing on range 1 and range 2, which I forgot to show you. So let me get back into range 2 and I'll show you that there's 2 grooves showing. So we're going to back all this way out on range 1. Going to unlock it, come into range 2, and I'll adjust it out far enough to where you should be able to see 2 grooves that lets you know that you're in range 2. And you can just kind of see the grooves starting to show right up against the gas block. Let me come out a couple more notches and you'll see that range 2 groove is showing on the plunger. Okay, so now you can see 2 grooves. That tells you you're in range 2. I know I'm kind of repeating myself here, but I'm just shooting from the hip. Okay, so we'll put this back in range 1. Hit the stops. Take spring tension off. Now we're back into range 1. Okay, so you need the spacer for range 2 to maintain enough spring tension so that you don't have this thing spin all the way off the rifle and come apart, which is what you do for maintenance and cleaning when you want to clean your plunger and the gas port area. If you leave the spacer in on range 1 and you tighten this too much, you over tighten this, you're going to destroy this wave spring. You're going to flatten it. And then you're going to have not enough tension even on range 1, let alone range 2. So what I did was, not realizing that I was already in range 1. Okay, so there's the stops on range 1. I thought that when I initially set this up that I was in range 2. So I released spring tension off of this and I turned it another notch and I kept going, and it started getting kind of stiff on me, and it got real stiff, and I could only get to like setting number 4 or 5. And what I did was I flattened out that spring, and I didn't do irreversible damage to it because I was able to pull this apart and just bend this back manually, put the curves back in it, so I got spring tension back. But that was my confusion when I initially set this rifle up. So I call that range I just showed you don't do it range. You have the correct range 1 with no spacer, 1 groove showing on the plunger. And then range 2, you'll have 2 grooves showing, and you need the spacer. So that's all I got for you today. The only other thing I can say is I do believe that this thing is a quality piece, and I think once I get out to the range again and do some secondary testing, I think this thing's going to be a benefit to the different types of ammo that you use. Okay, so I thought I was done, but I just realized I probably should mention something else. When you buy the RifleSpeed Adjustable Gas Block, it's going to come with the 917 installed, and he gives you an extra plunger, 937. So what do those numbers mean? That's the actual length in inches. So that's 0.917. And here's the larger plunger that comes with the kit. And you can see that they're pretty accurate. When he gives you the number for the plunger, it's right there. So that's the 937 plunger there. And then I bought some smaller sizes. He goes up and down in 10,000ths increments. And then back to range 1 and range 2, You know, what size plunger are you going to use? Are you going to run suppressed? Are you going to run commercial 308? You're going to try to run the weaker surplus NATO. There's still going to be some experimentation on your part as to how you dial your rifle in, what range you want to operate in, and what size plunger you want to use. Okay, I've talked about this in a couple of previous videos, but I did not have enough gas using the 917 plunger with this thing fully open on range 1. Commercial ammo ran great. The NATO, I could not always get it to lock back. So what I can do is maybe move this thing into range 2 and either go to a slightly larger plunger, or I could just stay in range 1 and use a slightly smaller plunger to try to get more gas for the NATO stuff that I have. When I installed this gas block, I took a look up through the gas port with the plunger, and with this 917 plunger that he gives you with the kit, and in this thing in a full open position, it looked to me like the plunger was all the way retracted, and I should have been able to get full gas on range 1 with a 917 plunger. But I'm not sure I was getting full gas. So at the time, I was kind of thinking it was just ammunition or a break-in issue with the rifle. But anyway, I got enough extra plungers, and now that I fully understand the different range adjustments and grooves on the plunger, and once again, I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I think I'm going to be able to get this rifle dialed in to shoot absolutely anything that I want and run suppressed or unsuppressed with just making some adjustments once I get the right range dialed in and the right plunger. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Everything else about the rifle I've talked about in previous videos. So really all I got to do is get this thing back out there and do some more function testing. Pete, North Las Vegas, over and out.